Okay, sorry for the delay. We'll wait a few more minutes while the other people join. In the meantime, tell us in the chat, how are you doing in quarantine? So I think almost all of you are here. Maybe a few are still waiting to fly this week. Could be worse. Okay, surprisingly all right. How's the food? Surviving. Have you figured out Food Panda and Uber Eats yet to get some variety in your meals? Right. Yeah. Food Panda and Uber Eats are lifesavers for sure. Good way to try out a lot of things that you can get in Taipei that you might not be able to. Are you in Taipei or in your regions already? Maybe a mix. Okay. So you ready? Yes. Okay. So today's topic is CLIL. You learned a little bit about it in the morning as well.
And I think the host has to make me host.
Okay, so that's gonna be.
If I can be made host.
Apologies for the technical difficulties. Okay. Do you have a nice view from your windows?
Yeah.
I've seen some that were a building, just like the other building on the other side. So you can't share your screen?
No, I cannot share right now. Can
Just send the link to.
All right. Well, while we are waiting to be made host, we actually have an activity that we're gonna do first that doesn't require me to, I'm sure that doesn't require screen sharing. We heard that you guys had a workshop and learned a little bit about CLIL in the morning. So that's still a check-in with everyone. So Megan and I will know where to start, and also to avoid talking too much about the same things again. To do this activity, you can click on the link I'm gonna post in the chat box. Right now.
So click on the link in the chat box. And also as a reminder, please turn your cameras on for the workshops.
Thank you. I am getting some cat and heart. So I know people are on here now. We'll wait a couple seconds. And then we can start. Basically, we just have a couple questions for you, and we want to know where you are right now with CLIL and your concerns or some questions that you already have. So here we go. First question. See the question. Can you see the question? If yes, can you let me know? I'm not so sure if I can see.
Can you give a thumbs up if you can see the question?
Can you see?
Yes.
Can you answer?
There's only one answer so far.
Okay, well, let's try to jump to the next one and see if they can still do it. Well, CLIL is content and language integrated learning. You should be able to enter your 3 words. Give us a thumbs up, you can enter your words. And thumbs down if you cannot. I'm getting some answers now.
Didn't vote in time.
I wish I could share my screen.
Okay, so some of the answers, you have English, content, learning, fun, culture, courses, cognition, interaction, interdisciplinary, speech-oriented. Great, that's a good idea.
Okay, well, this is a word cloud, and just want to know what the main ideas that you have when it comes to CLIL. And I don't know if you can see it, but we can see some big words: language, content, learning, integrated. These are all about the name of CLIL, and it's yes, they're all part of this. And I can see cultural exchange. That is very interesting. Yes, you're gonna be co-teaching a lot of the time when you are doing CLIL, so that's definitely a big part of it. Bilingual, also interesting. Positive wording, cultural exchange, and speech-oriented, interactive, subject teaching. Yes.
Okay.
All good words. And the next one is about the challenges and advantages when we are doing CLIL. Let's take a look. Bilingual evaluation.
You're the host now, so you should be able to share.
Oh, I'm the host now? Okay. Let's share. Well, this is what I can see. Hopefully we are looking at the same thing. Yeah. Some challenges working with limited vocabulary, definitely. Will be challenging if students have a low level. Yeah, that's I think people share the same concern, and we can talk a little bit more about how we can co-teach more effectively later when our students are at a lower level in terms of English, limited vocabulary, advantage, teaching English that's more relevant to everyday conversations. Yes. In today's workshop, we will share with you some tips on using classroom English to create a more English-friendly environment. I'm glad to see that when we asked everyone to type 3 words about CLIL, nobody gave us negative words. Because if this question were asked to local teachers of Taiwan, they're probably gonna say something like clueless, useless, hard to implement. But you guys, you're very good. All positive answers. Okay, so well, thank you for sharing what you think and how much you know so far about CLIL. Now we're gonna jump into our presentation of the day. Sharing my screen. For today's agenda, we learned something from you guys from our warm-up questions. Then we'll talk a little bit about CLIL in Taiwan, but it's as a review. And hopefully we don't talk too much of the same things that you already listened to in the morning. And then classroom English. After these will be our first part of the workshop, then we'll have a short break. When you guys come back from the break, we'll have 2 sessions for discussion. We'll watch a video and then we'll talk about different case studies when it comes to CLIL. And hopefully we have some time for Q&A session.
So I'm going to talk briefly about CLIL in Taiwan. Some of this will be familiar, but it's good to have the context in general. Not all of you will be actually teaching in a CLIL classroom, but this workshop is hopefully still useful for you because these concepts are useful anytime you are teaching content, which is going to happen in an English classroom as well. So you are going to teach in your English textbook, you might be teaching about animals or about, is the echo better now, Lily? Yeah, okay, thank you. So you might be teaching about animals or the environment or things like that. Especially if you're teaching upper levels, you're going to have a lot of content even in a normal English classroom. So that is useful. These concepts are useful even if you're only in an English classroom, but especially if you're in a CLIL classroom. Okay, so Taiwan's goal is to be, one of their goals is to be bilingual by 2030. And this includes a wide variety of different aspects that they're working on in terms of translating government things to have everything available in English and Chinese, and also improving the English in the tourist industry and in the education system. And part of that is CLIL for the classroom. So including more bilingual education into public elementary and junior high schools. So one way to achieve this goal is by using CLIL, or content and language integrated learning, in public schools. So it's a way to have more frequent exposure to English in the schools outside of just their normal English class. And the idea is that the students will learn a lot more English faster by having English in their PE class or in their life class or in some other classes at the same time. So CLIL actually started in Europe. So it was often used with like minority languages like Catalan in Spain, or sometimes with English in other non-English speaking countries. But the context of Europe and Taiwan are very different, and so it's not easy to just cut and paste those European models into the Taiwanese context. So how do we get CLIL courses into schools around Taiwan? One way that they are increasing CLIL in Taiwan is by using incentives. So the central government has many that they want to use for bilingual education, and then the county governments can apply for this from the central government. So you might notice that You are in 4 different, well, if you count Holian as one region, 3 different counties, and you might have very different experiences between the 3 counties because your particular county government might have a different priority or might have applied for different things. And then they distribute that money to individual schools who are open to establishing a bilingual program. So this initiative might not have come from your co-teacher. It might have come from the principal or from someone else who wants to have this in the classroom, but that person may or may not be someone who actually is boots on the ground actually doing this work. And it might also not be someone who even knows what it's about or what is going on. So that can be problematic sometimes, but can also be an opportunity. So once they get the funding to establish a bilingual program, then they have some problems sometimes. For example, it's sometimes confusing what the exact definition of CLIL is. Have you heard about soft CLIL and hard CLIL? Thumbs up, thumbs down, sort of, a little bit. So CLIL is 2 things together, right? It's English in this case, or some other language, and content. And hard CLIL is emphasizing the content. So you're trying to teach science and you want to throw in some English. And then soft CLIL is you're trying to teach English and you talk about science or you talk about PE or whatever. But sometimes the focus is on the subject and sometimes it's on the language. And so it can be confusing when people have a different idea of what you should focus on and who is, what the main goal is. It can look different in every school, and there's a lack of uniformity in terms of what CLIL is looking like and how successful it is. So some known problems that we have so far in the Taiwanese context is that there's often a lack of curricula. There are some textbooks, especially life. So life is a class you might not be familiar with from an American school, but it will cover things like how to brush your teeth and what else? Shadow. What a shadow is and what rules you should follow on the playground and how to fold clothes and things like that a first or second grader might not know and typically learns at home from their parents, but we also cover it in school here. And so they do actually have a life book in English in a lot of the schools, but a lot of the other subjects don't have a textbook. And so if an ETA doesn't speak Chinese and is trying to collaborate with the Chinese textbook, it can be challenging sometimes. Lack of time, it often takes more time because you have to collaborate between, sometimes you have you've heard the word local English teacher, LET, quite a bit by now, but in CLIL classes, you're not working with English teachers. You're probably going to be working with math teachers. Well, maybe not math as much, but science teachers or life teachers or PE teachers or art teachers. So you have some local content teachers and maybe also the English teacher is involved too if the content teacher doesn't speak enough English. There's a lack of training sometimes and a lack of understanding. So it's a balance between simplifying the subject materials so that they're understandable in English, but also not too simple that they don't learn anything new about the content. So the balance between the content and the language is a challenge as well. So some other problems, not to focus too much on the negative, but lack of language proficiency. The students might not feel that they can keep up with the English, and also the local teachers might worry about their ability to teach in English. And lack of experience with co-teaching. Your LETs are probably going to know more about how to co-teach, but the math teacher and the science teacher are less familiar with these models, so they might not have ever co-taught before. And we also don't know how well this is actually working in the classes because it's relatively new. Okay, so there's all these problems, but why do we still want to do CLIL anyway? Why are we doing it and what are the benefits? So some known benefits. It can facilitate collaboration and innovation between teachers. So you can work with different teachers in different departments and learn what they're doing and try to use some cross-curricular activities. It can provide more diverse learning opportunities for students so that they can learn English through movement in their PE class or through auditory skills in a music class, for example, or visual in an art class, for example. It can also lower students' anxiety about speaking English because they have to do it often, and the focus when you're in a PE class, the focus is not on them saying the grammar exactly correctly, but just in terms of the focus is more on communicating. And schools with CLIL are popular, and more students are wanting to go to schools with CLIL. But mainly, it is an easy way to increase the time that the students are spending speaking and listening to English in their daily lives. So we want to try to take advantage of this time and have it be useful for them to actually learn the content and the English as well. Okay, so some takeaways. You're not alone in this. There's a lot going on, and it's confusing for a lot of different characters in the CLIL program. So the principal and your co-teacher and the head of the county might all have different ideas, but it's relatively new and we're trying to learn together. Everyone's experiences might look different, so you can, of course, talk to other ETAs and get ideas from each other, but don't be surprised if you end up having very different looking classrooms, and that if your teacher and their co-teacher have a different idea of what CLIL is, still try to learn from each other's examples, but understand that things are going to be different in different places. And as advisors, we will try our best to help you, but we might need to know a lot more context of your particular situation to be able to answer your questions, because CLIL can mean very different things to different people and in different situations. So if you have any questions or you need any help with your CLIL classes, please give us a little bit of background when you're asking questions. Okay, and then in the next part, Ting is going to, do you have any questions yet at the moment? So Ting is going to talk about classroom English. This is very important for CLIL, but it's also important for a normal English classroom as well. So even if you already know you're not going to be doing much CLIL, still this is a useful part for you as well.
Well, I realize a lot of you are in Taiwan already, and it's 2 p.m., 2:25 p.m. And are you jet lagged still? Yes? No? I guess some of you have been here for a couple of days, hopefully. If you're jet lagged, it's okay. We really appreciate you being here. I can see some people yawning. Okay. So when we were talking about how we want to do this workshop, we really kept in mind that not everyone will be doing CLIL. However, there is still some value that we can provide, something that we can provide for everyone that you will find helpful. Basically, if we imagine a Taiwanese English teacher getting introduced to CLIL and being told that this is something that they have to do from now on, it's a very panicking situation right now. Yeah. So not just new to you, not just new to us, also new to the LETs. So like
And
Megan
especially
said,
the content teachers who are not used to speaking English with their students.
exactly, because CLIL is supposed to be for everyone. So you can imagine what's going on in the world of English teaching now in the local schools. That's why we keep saying that there's different definitions of CLIL. There's different ways to do it. And the big push right now is not to intimidate the teachers. There are all these benefits that we want to have by doing CLIL, but we cannot reach all these overnight. So we're going to start from the very beginning, from the ground zero. Is that how you say it? Yeah. And classroom English is one way to do it. When a lot of the teachers are self-conscious about speaking full English in their classrooms, that's like one big thing that prevent them from willing to try CLIL. And in a lot of the workshops right now, we are telling these teachers that it's okay, you don't need to be fluent, as long as you try to create a classroom that is friendly, that it's comfortable for people who are willing to try to speak more English. So one way to do that is to speak more classroom English. So what is classroom English? In a class, we have to say a lot of things. There's some content, there's some instructions, and a lot of the time, the English that we speak, they're not directly related to what we are teaching. So classroom English is referring to the commonly used words, phrases, and expressions that a teacher would say in a class, and not just in an English class. It can be in a PE class, it can be in the life class. So anything, any class in any scenario, if you want to incorporate more English, you have to know some basic classroom English. And what's the difference between classroom English and content English? Here's an example. This is an everyday conversation that you will see in the class. The teacher would greet everyone and the student would respond. Can you tell which of these expressions or sentences are considered classroom English? Just take a quick read through.
You can type in the chat anything that you think might be classroom English. The red is just what the teacher says, and the green is what the students say. So not everything the teacher says is necessarily going to be classroom English, but a lot of it is, you're right. Good morning. Please turn to page.
Miss
Thank you for
yes.
sharing. Yes, how are you today? I'm good. That doesn't necessarily have to be about the specific lesson. That could be common. Great. That's right. We will talk about. Are you ready? Yeah, great.
Yes. Oh, great answers. As you can see, all of these that's highlighted with green are considered classroom English. There's a lot of English that a teacher can say and speak while teaching something really simple. And the kids, they are learning all these as well. So today we really want to take time to focus on this because, well, what's left, the things that are not highlighted, they're considered content English, in this conversation.
Right, so one more thing about that content English and versus the classroom English. Sometimes teachers will be confused with CLIL and they'll think if I'm teaching about plants, I need students to learn, the whole class will be in Chinese, but I want students to know the word photosynthesis in English. And so they'll ask the ETA to teach photosynthesis in English to these poor third graders who can barely say it in Chinese. And That's not what we want. We don't want a class in Chinese with some random fancy English words that they don't use in daily life. So if it's something that you think that they could benefit from, then definitely feel free to teach the relevant content for that day. So something like bananas, noodles, cheese, steak, those are great things for them to learn in English anyway. But if it's super specific, like if you're teaching about art and the Chinese words that they're teaching are like Renaissance painting and modernism and whatever, they don't necessarily need to know that in English, but they do need to know what color is this, and take out your pen and share with a partner and turn to page whatever. So you can try to use some of those words more in the class than the actual that the content words that that maybe they're teaching. Your co-teacher is probably teaching them those words in Chinese. They don't necessarily need to be learning those in English on the same day, right? So you can present it, but not necessarily focus on having them learn those fancy words. Yeah.
And I want to add that, as you can see, like a big chunk of this conversation is classroom English.
Mhm.
So when you enter the school and you get the textbook of a third grader, you'll find that they're only learning letters A to Z. Don't be discouraged. Here's a whole lot that you can still teach and you can still provide to your students. Even if you're just teaching A to Z this morning, you can still teach them good morning. All these classroom English are something that they learn as they listen to you speak.
Mm-hmm. Especially the things that you're going to use again and again in every class. So if you have them in the morning, you're probably going to say good morning every day. And how are you, or that's right. And some of these things they don't necessarily need to understand the first time, but as you say it more often, then they'll start to pick it up as well. But how can they pick up this language? They need to have content that's comprehensible. So they need to understand what you're saying. And if you have if you are expressive enough, and if you have ways to make content comprehensible, you could teach the lesson in Russian or Portuguese or whatever, and they could still understand at least some of what you want them to do. So it's not necessarily about, they don't necessarily need to understand the English for them to understand you. They first understand what you want, and then they put that together with the words that you're saying. So even if they didn't know those words before, they can learn the words by understanding the context and then understanding those words that you're saying. So first, before I talk about some ways to make content more comprehensible, I know that you've discussed this a bit. You've seen it in different workshops, and you've also written about it in your Google Classroom assignments sometimes. So when you were watching the ETF videos or demonstrations, you wrote about this. And some of you have teaching experience, and I'm sure you all have learning experience as well. So what are some ways that you have seen in person or read about or used yourself to make content more comprehensible to language learners? This could be in class or in daily life. If you have a friend who doesn't speak English fluently, how can you make yourself comprehensible to them? Okay, we see using realia, so real objects. Hand motions, diagrams, pictures, lots and lots of pictures.
Videos.
Simpler words.
Act it out.
Okay, using simpler words sometimes. Daily conversations. Charades, yes. So you might feel silly sometimes acting in front of your students, but they will appreciate it. They will understand you better, and they will probably find it entertaining if you can act or draw. I'm a terrible drawer. My drawings don't make any sense, but the students usually find it funny. They can understand it enough, and they think it's funny that they can draw better than I can, even though they're 6 years old. Facial expressions, labels, visual tools, motions, videos, noises, symbols and props, acting out, rephrasing, great, demonstration and repetition, right? So you've seen a lot of these before, and it's sometimes hard in the moment to remember them and to want to use them all. But it's good to be aware of them, and then they will come with practice. So next slide. Right, so as most of you said already, use Realia. So if you have, a lot of ETAs like to make PowerPoints, and you can use pictures or GIFs on your PowerPoint. They find that funny if you can use pictures of things that they are relevant to them, even better. Your drawings on the board as well. You can use things that you see in the classroom. So if you're talking about colors, you can talk about what color Kelvin's shoes are, or you could talk about what color Allison's pen is or something. So refer to things in the classroom and on your PowerPoint. Don't just put it on the PowerPoint. It's helpful if you have like a laser pointer, or you point to things so that they can know which part you're talking about. Repetition. Don't underestimate the power of repetition. It can help with understanding what's going on in the moment, and also over time. If you use the same phrases again and again, then they'll be more likely to understand them. And if you get the students to repeat after you and say some of the phrases as you're teaching them, then they'll understand them much better and remember them better. And it might feel like you're repeating too much, but that's okay too. So err on the side of a little bit too much repetition, even if it feels a bit tedious for you because you said the word and they should know it, but it's not always that easy when you're learning the language. Speak clearly and slowly as much as possible. So there's a balance between trying to sound to say things that they understand and to speak naturally. Because if they don't know much English yet, then there's not very many words that they do understand. And so if you limit yourself to only the words that they understand already, then they won't learn anything new. So try to make what you're saying redundant in a way. So some kids are going to know the words, some kids are going to understand the motions, some kids are going to respond to the images. They don't necessarily need to, at any point, understand all three at the same time, but they should be helping each other, right? So like if you have a picture of a cat and you start talking about a cat, and then you make a meowing sound, those, maybe one student got it right away, but some other students maybe needed the extra help. So rather than removing any words that they might not know, add extra context so that they can understand the meaning anyway. Ask for comprehension checks. Ask comprehension checks regularly so that you know that they're following along. So a comprehension question check is not, do you have any questions, or do you understand? But it's something like, what is one example of this thing? Or what is the first thing you should do? Or how many people are going to be in your group? Right? So something that they can give you an answer that you can know whether they understand you or not. Practice and explain things, the same thing in a variety of ways. So you don't want to put too much content in one class, but you also don't want to do the same activity for 40 minutes because they will get bored, they have a short attention span, and it might not be all that productive to repeat one activity many, many times. But you can do use a variety of different ways to teach similar content. And then those activities will reinforce each other. And maybe one activity involves moving things around. So like using either magnets or pieces of paper and moving things around for the more kinesthetic learners. And then a different activity might involve speaking. And a different activity might involve writing, but the content is still the same, so that you can reach all the students in a different way, one way or another. Being redundant is okay. So it might seem ridiculous as you're speaking or as you're explaining something to have hand motions and words and visuals and speak slowly, but it can be really helpful to get more students to understand. And then modeling your instructions, especially since you'll have a co-teacher, it can be very helpful to use each other to model instructions. So to ask, like if it's a dialogue, ask your co-teacher questions and have both of you model what the students are supposed to do. Or if it's two teams playing against each other, have you be one team and your co-teacher be another team. So demonstrate what you actually want them to do in the task, right? So if you use all of these ways, it's very helpful for CLIL, but it's also helpful for just a general English class that you want them to understand what's going on. In an English class, eventually on an English test, you're not going to have all of those things at the same time. You're not going to have a picture of a cat and the word cat and somebody saying meow at the same time, because that's not testing whether they actually learned the word cat or not. But during the class, when you're teaching something new, then you want them to understand as much as possible. So make the content comprehensible. Okay. Use appropriate language. This is tricky because it's hard to define what is considered appropriate. But you want to remember that you are a teacher and they are students and they are 6 years old or 12 years old or whatever. So you want to talk to them as if you're a teacher and they're children, right? So don't talk to them as if they're like your friends from home, or don't avoid using a lot of slang because it might be inappropriate to use with students, not necessarily. I mean, of course, we'd also want to avoid using using swear words and other inappropriate language with your students, but some casual speech that you couldn't imagine an American elementary school teacher speaking with their students is also probably better to avoid. For one thing, they won't understand it. And it also models an inappropriate kind of teacher-student communication. But you are a native speaker and you should be speaking as if you're a native, like they want to be able to understand natural English, right? So you don't talk like a textbook. Some of the textbooks are going to be they might sound kind of stilted. So if someone says, "How are you?" you don't need to respond, "I'm fine, thank you, how are you?" You can just say, "I'm good, I'm fine, not too bad, how are you?" Respond as you normally would. But also don't oversimplify your language. So this is going to be tempting, and I've seen a lot of ETAs do this, just to use like very simple words to hope that they'll understand what you want. Like, you, this, now, go. You, no, you, yes, good, bad, right? They might understand that, but it's not going to help them learn to actually speak English. You want, if there's some extra words that they don't understand, that's fine. As long as they get the meaning, to have those extra words will help them to become more fluent. So for example, instead of you, this, now, I want you to write number A, and then you point to A. And then you have a complete grammatical sentence that a normal English speaker would say, but it still has those extra the extra scaffolding that they should be able to understand what this is. For example, as a foreigner in Taiwan, an obvious foreigner, sometimes people don't expect me to speak any Chinese, and so they will just start doing charades and will point at things and say like 1 or 2 words, and I have no idea what they mean. And it would be so much easier, even if I didn't understand every word they said, it would be so much easier if they said a complete sentence with the hand motions, sure, but not just like random charades without any words. So remember that when you're teaching as well. So don't use too much casual speech, but also don't use too much simplified speech either. So it can be a tricky balance sometimes.
All right. So to try to conclude what we said, before I jump into the principles, I just want to emphasize once again that talking about classroom English or CLIL in general may seem like it's really small sometimes for me, because it's a lot of the time we spend talking about this. It's like reading and all these and there's like simple sentences, but but I think it's very important, because you being in a school, it's not just about the time when you're teaching in class, it's that every moment that you interact with the students. So basically every sentence, every conversation that you have with them is an educational opportunity for them that they're learning from. So to be able to achieve that, to be that good educational resource to all your students, keep these key principles in mind when using classroom English, but also for your day-to-day interaction as well. We want to be really intentional when it comes to the language that we use with them. Using simple and clear English is not something that we can do naturally. It's not something I can do naturally either, because we're so used to be able to communicate with other native speakers. Yeah, it takes a lot of practice to speak clearly and to speak with simple but not oversimplified sentences. What I did in the past was I would record myself, and then I actually watched my own video for many times. And each time I watched my own teaching, I learned something. Every time I know, oh, I can simplify that. I can break down this one instruction into 2 parts. Or, oh, it would be nice if I had a slide next to me so that they have that visual input instead of just listening to me. So all these small things are the things that actually matter, and that will make a huge difference. So we want to be really intentional when it comes to every single thing that we do. But I mean, don't put too much stress on yourself. Just keep in mind that every small thing, every small step that you take actually makes a difference. And
don't forget too to pay attention to your students. So you can have the perfect lesson plan, and you think that your students are going to understand everything, but especially if you're nervous or you're worried about things, you're worried about your lesson plan, you're worried about getting everything in and doing all the steps that you said you were going to do. Don't forget to see, like, do your students actually understand you? If everybody is following along perfectly, then maybe you don't need to do quite as many charades along with it. But if they're not understanding, then maybe you need to take a step back and add something else. Maybe you thought that they already knew this. Your co-teacher told you that they already learned these things and they don't know what you're talking about. Then respond to your students should take priority over your lesson plan. So respond to what they're actually doing, how much they're understanding and engaging.
yeah, and if your LET asks you to teach a certain a lesson, a certain content, do you still take time to teach classroom English? Not classroom English in general, but the classroom English that you think you will need. So take time to teach those things. it would make your lesson a lot more smoother. And the kids would be less likely to get completely lost because at least they understand your instruction. So that's part of being intentional. These things seem not as relevant, but they do take time for the kids to learn. And it's worth, it will be worth of your time too. And then, so next, scaffold everything. That's what we've been talking about. We're just going to point this out again. We want to model it first, especially for younger kids and for those who will be teaching in elementary school. There, you can follow these steps, model it for the whole class, and then ask them to do it in groups, ask each group to model for each other, and then have them do it in pairs. Then they can do it. Finally, they can do it by themselves. For younger kids, it really takes that much time and that many steps for them to be fully aware of what they're getting into.
Right. So you don't want to just put, especially a lot of Taiwanese students are very shy and they don't like to be put on the spot. So don't teach one thing and then immediately call on Valerie, what's the answer? Say first have maybe the whole class answer together. And then especially if it's one clear answer, like a vocabulary word or something that they're all going to be able to answer together. Have the whole class and then into smaller groups and then finally individuals, so that they have a little bit more time to practice in their comfort zone, but that you still take away their comfort zone and have them practice by themselves too.
Yeah, so don't overplan your lesson too much. Usually 1 or 2 activities would be way more than enough in one lesson. So because we do need to keep in mind that all these time we need to prep the students for the actual activity. Yeah, so scaffolding is very important. Then some very commonly asked questions when it comes to using as much classroom English as we can, or CLIL in general, is it ever okay to speak Chinese? What do you think? Thumbs up, down? Not sure. In a CLIL lesson, okay, I can see this. Thumbs down, not sure. Yeah, this question is, I would say, most commonly asked questions from the LETs, because they're also lost and confused, not sure what is the right way to do it. And my answer to this question is yes, it's okay. But not because you are afraid of speaking English and not because you don't know how to say this word in English. That would be the wrong reasons when you use Chinese. If ever you were to use Chinese, or if your LET discussed this question with you, I think the only right reason and scenario to use Chinese is that you are sure that using this word would increase the students' understanding dramatically and would make your lesson a lot more effective.
The understanding of what they're trying to learn. So of course, the students would understand better if the whole class was taught in Chinese. But if you're also trying to get them to learn English, would adding the Chinese help them learn English?
And yes, and have priorities too. If your class is in chaos, and some kids are trying to hurt each other or getting hurt, then in that situation, make sure your priority is student safety. So no matter what language you're using, do the most effective one. Yeah, so that's when it's also something to keep in mind when we were teaching with our co-teacher. Just have what the priorities are always to make their learning, to provide quality learning environment, and to make sure that everyone is safe. Under these 2 priorities, anything goes, I would say. Yeah. So out of control situations, of course, use that language that kids will understand immediately. And the last one, what Megan already said in the previous slides, routines, repetition are key for very low level English learners. So like we said, we don't want too much. We don't want to bite off too much than we can chew. We don't need to introduce, even if it's like little things like classroom English, we don't want to introduce too much of classroom English every time. Perhaps if you're teaching third graders or first or second graders in their life lessons, you probably are able to only introduce good morning for the whole week. And don't be surprised and don't be discouraged when you have this situation, when you encounter this situation. That doesn't mean that you're not doing enough. That means your learners, your students, they need that time to process and to get used to how it feels like to say good morning to a foreigner, because it's definitely different from saying good morning or as a like robotic response to their LETs. So develop that routine and build up that routine step by step. Introduce a little bit in each lesson or each time you come in contact with your students. And think about what would your daily greetings be? What would your daily routines if you were ever, if not teaching the whole lesson yourself, I'm sure you will have opportunities where you would be talking to the faculty member of the school. You would be doing a conversation thing, every week at a school gathering or something like that. Come up with your own routine, how you want to greet people, and make that into like your thing. And then they will remember when I talk to teacher Somi, and I always greet her first with good morning, and then I always ask her how she's doing. Things like that is very plays an important role for a foreign language learner. So think about that. Okay, so that's all of the
First part for the tutorial. So let's have 2-minute break.
Yeah, any questions first?
Any questions so far? No? Okay. So let's come back at 3:10. And then in the second half of the workshop today, we're going to hear a lot more from you too, not just us talking.
Okay, so come back at 3:10, right?
All right, so come back. Turn on your cameras again, please. Less than 50 minutes left for the day. You can do it. All right, so for the first discussion, we're going to talk about an example. It's hard to imagine sometimes what CLIL actually looks like if you haven't seen it. I know you watched a few examples this morning, but we're going to watch a different one. And this is a first grade life science class, and with an ETA from last year named Iker. And this is not a perfect example, but it's a very good one. So watch the video and then pay attention to, so we'll show you the questions first before you watch the video. And then we want you to discuss them in breakout rooms that we'll put you in after we all watch the video. So look at, so the main ones are in green. So what do you find effective and what could be added or improved upon? But more specifically, how are the 4 stages taught? Do you think this is effective? What stands out with the vocabulary teaching? What's useful for students? How might you pre-teach the vocabulary? Some themes include metamorphosis, change, process. Is there any other ideas to supplement the lesson so that it's content-oriented, but also includes a language focus? What are some ways that Iker engaged the students and the LET's roles? What type of co-teaching is happening, and is it effective? Okay, so that's a lot to keep in mind, but generally, what do you like, what do you not like? What can you learn from this video? Okay, so Ting is going to show the video, and then we'll put you into breakout rooms after that. Does that work? Does that work? No. Screen share. Do you want to give them the link? Just give them the link. Oh yes, but it's a bit quiet. Okay. Was that? Do you want to try one more time and put the sound on? Is that better? Or still not?
Still no.
I can't hear. All right, so we're going to let you watch this by yourself. It's a YouTube link, so we'll put the link in the chat. Please do watch it. Just the, do you have the timestamp? Just minute 1.4, 1 minute and 40 seconds to 7 minutes. You don't have to watch the whole thing. Okay, so that should take a little bit more than 5 minutes. So we'll put you in breakout rooms at 3:21-ish. Okay. So please watch this link from 1:40 to 7 minutes, and then we'll give you the things to discuss and put you in breakout rooms. All right, excellent. Looks like you're mostly finished. Ting is going to share the document in the Google chat. Go ahead and open, or in the Zoom chat. Go ahead and open it before you get sent to your breakout rooms, because I don't think you can have access to the chat when you're in your breakout room. So we're going to put you into small groups and give you 10 minutes. Discuss the questions on the document, and if you have some time, also add a couple notes to the document itself. So you should be able to see what other people are typing as well. That might give you some ideas for your own discussion, even if they're in a different group. And if they have exactly the same idea as you don't have to write it again. But if you have some other idea, you can add that as well. Okay. And if you finish talking about everything there is to talk about this particular video, and you still have some time, then you can also talk about CLIL in general, or how quarantine is going, or anything else that you want to talk about. But please first do answer these questions. Okay. So you don't need to copy the document. You can just type directly on it, so everybody can be typing on the same document. Good question. Thanks. We're all in the same document, yes. Hopefully that will work well. Just go ahead and if you all have editing access to it, right? You can type on it. Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of, but you don't need to write your name. They can type on it. Okay. Okay, so Ting is going to put you into groups. If you're a coordinator and you accidentally get put into a group, you can feel free to leave the group, or you could also stay and chat if you feel like it. But I think she's mostly put just ETAs into the group. Right? Ready?
There are some people that I assigned them into groups, but they are not now. I'm just going to assign them again.
Hold on 2 seconds. That's me. You can be thinking about your answers while you wait. Okay. Yeah.
Everyone's assigned.
Okay. And Janaya and Jack?
Janaya is in group 10. Jack is in group 7.
Is her screen frozen, or is my screen frozen? And May? May, did you get put in a group?
Not yet.
Not yet. Hold on, please.
No worries.
And Jack and Janaya,
I don't see May. May, you're in room 4. Do you see an
it
invitation?
says not joined.
Mm.
Maybe just move her to another room and see if she gets another invitation.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And Janaya, Jack is.
Jack is in room 7.
Is Jack sleeping?
Well, just not back here.
Right.
So room
Okay, welcome back. We saw some interesting answers and I hope you had a good discussion.
Does anyone want to just tell us a little bit? We have some idea of what you talked about because we can see your notes, but can we just hear from a couple of the groups? What kinds of things did you talk about? What was your overall takeaway from this video? Volunteers.
The change in tone and movement when introducing terms, like egg, how he said it in different voices and had the kids do the movements was a really good job of solidifying the word and having movements or images to bring that word back into memory.
Great. Yeah, that's good to know for any kind of vocabulary teaching, which you'll be doing a lot of, whether or not you're doing CLIL. Kids get bored of repeating the same word, but they do need to repeat it many times before they can remember it. So using different voices, being silly can also be very helpful, and having some sort of visual motion can be helpful as well. What are some other things that people talked about? Thank you, Elizabeth. One or two more comments.
We mentioned that like because I think this was mentioned at some point earlier today, that like the specific words for the butterfly stages didn't seem as useful for kids to learn as like some of the other words, just like changing or stage 1 or that kind of stuff. So yeah, maybe they don't need to like harp on
learn metamorphosis, for example. Yeah. Or what was the word? I don't even remember in English. Yeah, exactly. So that's something that you're going to see in CLIL, that maybe your co-teacher will want you to teach these like specific words, and it might not hurt to teach them, but not necessarily make that the focus of your lesson. So if the curriculum really wants you to teach these words in English, or if your co-teacher really wants you to teach these words in English, you don't have to ignore the words completely, but I agree that that's probably not the most useful word for these kids to know. It's first grade, right?
And there are so many other ways that they can learn the same thing by looking at the picture or watching a video. They don't necessarily need to know the name of that step
in English. Yeah. Okay. Any one or two more comments? Thank you, Jacob. Do you have any comments on what they wrote?
We didn't see a lot of answers and discussions for question number 5. Mm-hmm. And that makes me curious. What do you actually think about the co-teaching or this type of partnership?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The co-teacher the LE2 was walking around and checking with understanding, paying attention to which students were following along and giving them additional help. But it was definitely a one teacher lead and one assist kind of a scenario. So maybe there could have been more ways to work together. Other comments for that?
Or when you start to co-teach, you would be playing the role that the LET is playing in the video. I guess it's this way because that was an observation. So the ETA got to teach most of the part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is also a short clip of a bigger lesson with more context. So some of you mentioned maybe going over the video again to reinforce, repeat ideas. And then I think he did do that in the rest of the lesson that we didn't see. But I like your ideas for what can be improved upon, paying attention to the students in the back, getting the LET involved, reinforcing some ideas, having more explicit comprehension checks. Yeah, focusing on words like change or home instead of metamorphosis or chrysalis.
And I like room 7's comment. I think I'm not sure if you can see, but it's the comment for question number 4. What did you find effective? And room 7 mentioned that sticking with specific ordinal words, like stage 1 instead of saying first, second, etc. That's very helpful. Kids can learn that from your repetition. Yeah.
All right, so now we have one more discussion for you. So we're going to put you in the same breakout rooms, and or slightly different, or the same. The same. The same. And this time we're going to give you another document, and this is case studies. So it's 3 different situations. There's not a ton of context in these, but just 3 situations that you might find in you'll send the link. Yeah. So again, open this document and then go ahead and type your notes on it. There's 3 cases and they'll be divided by group. So pay attention to which group you're being put into. And then if you still have time, then you can comment on the other ones as well. But just think of the guiding questions that they have there. Do you want to go ahead and show the picture before we put them in breakout rooms? Okay, so there's 3 situations that could happen. What would you do in this situation? What concrete steps would you take to improve the situation? What would you hope your co-teacher could do differently? And how would you bring this up to your co-teacher? Like, how would you ask them to change? So these questions will be in there, and then you can discuss these or some other questions that come to mind when you're reading the 3 case studies. So they're very short. They're usually 3 sentences or something. Groups 1, 4, 7 for A, 2, 5, 8 for B, etc. How do we know what group number we're in? The Zoom should say invitation to join group breakout room 2. So the room that you're assigned to, room 1, room 2, room 3. Okay. And well, you'll have 10 minutes for this one too.
Wait, why am I in this breakout room?
You're not in a breakout room? Or you're by yourself?
I'm not. I'm in this. Oh, yeah, I wasn't assigned to one.
Oh no! Thank you for letting us know. Hold on.
doing it right now. Ethan is supposed to be in breakout room.
You're supposed to be in 1. It didn't.
I'm gonna move you to room 2 very quickly and move you back. Okay. Do you see an invitation?
Is he there or no?
Yeah, he is.
Where is he? Now he's in room 2.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, that works. And you're back. So you made it to room 2, but not room 1? Ethan?
It's room 2, but I think this is room 1. right? Or no?
No,
No.
no.
Oh, let me. Well, actually, wait. I have the join button now. Let me try right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good luck.
Welcome back. And accidentally, this document had turned into a joint document from not just from our region, but also I think we are getting some input from the southern region too, which is good. We can have more ideas to talk about. What do you think about these? What's this? What do you think about these case studies? Let's look at the first one. We have someone from group 1, 4, 7, and 10. Share with us what you think about case study A.
What did you talk about in those groups? We see your notes and there are lots of great ideas, but what other things did you talk about? One from group 1?
We kind of discussed, so if there's a language confusion, maybe doing some planning before class starts. So even if the LET chooses to teach fully in Chinese, like maybe you could still follow along somewhat just based off of like, maybe it's a PE class. I'm assuming the teacher is going to be demonstrating. And also for short term, we considered maybe suggesting to play games that you'd be more familiar with, like games from the States in PE classes. Maybe the game is like something you're not familiar with. So if you're something you're familiar with, it'd probably be easier to follow Chinese. And then in the long term, we discussed maybe switching off, like taking the lead and explaining instructions. In my opinion, in my perspective, I think if I didn't understand any Chinese, it would be easier for me to explain the instructions in English and maybe the LET to start explaining some confusions in Chinese instead of the other way around. But yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
And teaching a class with CLIL doesn't mean that it has to be equally divided into Chinese and English and stuff like that. The ETA could also observe how the teacher teaches and identify key actions or key steps, and then talk to the LET about, oh, if we were to teach kids how to jump, then here's how to say jump in English.
Yeah, I agree with Ethan. Like, it's very important that you understand the context of the class that you're going into, and it can be very confusing if you don't understand Chinese, what to know what is going on. So ask the teacher beforehand, and then you can also ask the students sometimes too. Like, you can ask clarifying questions during class, and then that gives the students a real life communication task of letting their foreign teacher know what's going on. Like, that's real, like a real thing that they can communicate, is showing you something. Obviously, you don't want to interrupt your co-teacher in the middle of them talking, but you could use that strategy sometimes. Other comments for the first case study? No? Okay, so let's go to the second one. So different scenario. This one is about the kind of the opposite situation where the ETA has to do almost everything and in English, and the students don't necessarily understand it. So how about let's hear from someone from group 2, 5, or 8. What kind of things did you talk about? Some ideas for this one.
Yeah, we talked about how it might be more productive to kind of divide the because it was a lot since Billy doesn't know, or he's not great at speaking English, that, you know, for him to teach the whole lesson. So we discussed maybe dividing it into some smaller chunk, you know, to kind of just like gradually expose him.
Billy is the ETA, right? So you mean Chinese, or do you mean the LET?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it was Billy, the Oh yeah, sorry, I meant the for this students. So having the
yeah.
student do have it like a smaller chunk that they could do instead of the teaching the whole lesson, because that can be pretty overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, to break things up into, to divide the lesson a little more fairly, have clear roles of who is supposed to be doing what and how to help each other. He can also specifically tell his co-teacher things that he wants them to do, like, can you help me with this? It could be before class or it could be during class as well, to ask for additional support from your co-teacher. And then the case study A as well, some people mentioned that they could ask, the ETA could ask the LAT, tell the LAT that they want to help more. And that's something that LATs love to hear, and they maybe they don't want to bother you, but if you can show them that you actually are not just here to do the minimum, you actually want to help as much as you can, they'll appreciate that too.
And be specific with which part you want to help more. A lot of the times the LETs will have their lesson plan. So if you just say that I would like to add an activity to the lesson, they might not know how to incorporate that into their pre-planned lessons.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, could I please take charge of the introduction part of the activity, that's easier for them to let you be a part of the lesson.
Great, thanks. And there's more we could say about A and B, but in the interest of time and letting you free on time, let's look at case study C. So this is kind of a classic divide and teach independently situation where there's very little communication between the two, but they do their own part. So what do group 3, 6, and 9 have to say about these? Anyone from any of those groups want to share?
I really like how group 9 put it, although I'm group 6, but the splitting it up 10:30 is a sin, because that was something that group 6 also talked about, that it probably, if there's another way that your co-teacher is willing to do it, that we think it's better to collaborate throughout the lesson than to have those strict time limits. And we had a bunch of suggestions for ways that you could do that, and you could incorporate and keyword integrate English more throughout the lesson, especially in the art class setting. And I know we had some cool specific suggestions from other people in my group about how to do them.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Yeah, so this is a document that you should maybe keep and refer to sometime. Feel free to read through what everyone else wrote. So not just you guys, but also the Southern ETA is also added to it. And it might be helpful, not just for CLIL, but also for other co-teaching situations to have some of these ideas. All right, it is 4 o'clock. Yes. Thank you for bearing with us again. And we will see we will see Elon and Taidong again tomorrow, and everyone on Thursday. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
And have a wonderful evening in your hotel room.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.